Champ. We here today to discuss what are CBDCs. We're gonna drop some heat on you guys, super informative, and let you guys know exactly what they are, what they do, how they're gonna impact us, and then of course we're gonna give you our take on how we feel about CBDCs. Steve, did you want to start them off, or you want me to go roll into it?
Yeah, you shoot.
Okay, so just so you guys understand exactly what a CBDC is, CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. It's a type of digital currency that is issued and backed by a country's central bank, just like how physical money is issued and backed by a government, right? Basically, it's a digital form of money that's going to be created and regulated by the central bank of that particular country, and it can be used for transactions just like digital money, peer-to-peer transactions, online purchases, other types of payments, things of that nature. Um, the main difference between a CBDC and other types of digital currencies like cryptocurrencies and things like that, the CBDC again is issued and it's backed by the government. Cryptocurrencies are not; they're permissionless. You're able to transact and do the same things that these CBDCs plan to do, but they're not backed by anything. All right. In general, not all of them. Um, CBDCs are typically considered to be programmable, more stable, less risky than digital currencies. But we're going to get into that a lot now. All right. Um, so there are a couple benefits, quote unquote, that they do say that are going to come with CBDCs. Me personally, I am not for it, but I'll get into that a little later. Um, some of the potential disadvantages, though, that I want to point out for CBDCs are privacy concerns. You have the dependence on the technology itself. There's a digital divide. You completely lose anonymity, so you cannot be anonymous when you're transacting utilizing CBDCs. And there's the biggest point of all is centralized control. Because CBDCs are going to be issued and controlled by central banks, they have the potential to be used, and they are going to be used for surveillance, controlled by the governments. So essentially, this is going to pose a threat to everybody's civil liberties. So if you do something that they don't agree with, they have the ability to cut you off. If you're trying to utilize these CBDCs for a particular purchase or something that they don't agree with, they have the ability to cut you off and limit what you can use to purchase these things. So, all in all, that's generally what a CBDC is. It is not a cryptocurrency. I just want to make that clear. But a lot is happening and it's leading us into the use of CBDCs, especially off the back of what we discussed yesterday, which was FedNow. FedNow is essentially the precursor to CBDC, central bank digital currency.
So just to piggyback off of that, currently there's 105 countries exploring CBDC options. They're all at various stages in the process. That equates to about 95% of the total GDP. So we're talking about damn near 100% of the world, guys. So we urge you to go back and look at the FedNow video because all of these are kind of compounding each other. And once you get a clear view of what they're doing, we're going to circle back and really show you with proof uh, laws that are on the books, things that have been passed since last year. So when you're involved in crypto, for as long as Champ and I have been, we've been tracking this stuff for a long time. So FedNow, yeah, we did the live yesterday, but we knew about this like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it was launched, top of the year. They were testing it in New York. So it's ironic that the laws on the books are all pointing towards the United States creating their own CBDC, right? They're just not naming it that at the moment. So 105 countries, all at various stages. Most of them are already in pilot, and some are all full on India, China, just full on already with their situation. One of the things that we want to make you aware of with the CBDCs is really the downside, right? Because they can tote whatever they want, but you have to look at what happens when a central government is in control of all things. So in today's economy, yeah, we're still being tracked digitally through the use of our, bank cards, Visa, MasterCard, whatever logo that you're using. But the only issue with that is the government doesn't have the direct link to those companies and that data. They have to subpoena it or, request it in whatever way that they decide to. Now with the central bank digital currency, there's no need for that anymore, right? Because all that data is going to be held and stored with them on a public blockchain where, and some of it may be private, right? So you have to understand that there's going to be some public things that we can all see, and there's going to be some behind the scenes stuff that you're not going to be privy to. So that's one of the biggest dangers, is letting any government in any country have access to your money, right? Just think about all the downside to that, and we'll list a few. But today's situation is really just the guys. We're just here to spark conversation, right? Because we can't. There's no one way to really skin this cat right here. First thing is understanding what it is, understanding the ups and the downsides to it, and then as we start to progress and mature together, we could find ways to sidestep the CBDC. So that's the biggest, everyone's biggest concerns who knows about this. So like I told Champ, and I've been telling the university this, and I want to tell you guys this, is no one would ever create something that's going to put them in the same exact box as the masses.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's hold our hat on that, because that's what gives me the hope for the future. All we have to do is find these back doors that these guys create for them to play with. Right. Because we know it. There's a whole financial game that some of us know, some of us aren't privy to, but because we're in the information age, we're able to get a lot more data today. So there's no excuse on why you should be locked out of just how you move regularly in your livelihood. The biggest, for me, the most detrimental part to a CBDC is that it's programmable money. So what do I mean by that? And I'll give you an example. Guys, tax payments, tickets, you name it, any sort of infraction, there's no due process at that point with CBDCs. The law is going to state, listen, once you owe the taxes and it's calculated, it's coming right out of your account. Right. So, people that are living check to check, people who just don't have enough to make ends meet are going to feel this the most out of anybody else, because you figure, when you're down to your last $100 and you were going to buy dinner and somehow that speeding ticket came out of there, or the taxes, that's a problem for a lot of people. Right. And this is the access that we'll be giving up to a central authority. Right. So if you know anything about crypto, you know that this thing is built for decentralization, meaning there's no one person that is in control. That's the current world we live in today. Right. Google owns all our data on Google. Instagram, Meta owns all our data. And what do they do with it? They're selling it to anybody that's willing to pay for it. Right. So we kind of see the controls that are in place now, right, with a little bit of autonomy we have. It will be stripped away from us if we don't understand where these guys are going, right? And you have to understand, I'm not big on the politics, but there are politicians that are on our side, and then there's a fraction of them who are just that crazy that throw out so many other things. At the end of the day, guys, this is just all about controlling the masses, right? So when you're starting to see, the dollar depegging, and we did something on the collapse in U.S. not being a superpower anymore. It's just at this point, it's just it's a new day in history, guys. So what you're witnessing is, one, they're parading a show around us. It doesn't matter about who the superpower is in the world. The new superpower is not he who controls the world, is he who controls his or her own country. Right. So for as long as everyone has a CBDC, every country, they know that they're able to control the masses. So at any point that they want to create any sort of chaos, messing with our money is the ultimate way to get people to do whatever you want. Absolutely. Right. For as much as we love our money, guys, I'm telling you that you are about to lose control like nobody's business. So some of the things that we've been following, and again, just like the pandemic, guys, this is happening abroad. We can see it. The people are speaking, right? There was a time where there was no social media. So you just, Nigerians weren't on the internet. Now you're hearing it firsthand, boots on the ground, right? Because the world is a lot smaller due to technology. So what Champ and I do is we're able to, we're just following what's happening in China. We're following what's happening in India. We're following what's happening in Kenya and all these places all across the world. And it's absolute chaos. The biggest hurdle is really finding a way to break human behavior, right? Because we're so used to just, all right, take our money, we buy something. Okay, we swipe. There's never anything that really blocks us outside of just not having the funds and it being declined. So we're entering a point in history where, give an example now. So inflation is a big issue. CBDCs can control inflation. Why? Because they can control spending, where you spend, how you spend, how much you can spend, how much time you have to spend, right? Because savings does nothing for the economy. And Champ says this all the time. You can't save yourself the wealth, right? So if your money's not working for you, it's just going to be in the hands of other people that are making it work for them.
Absolutely.
And you're not getting your due process. But now with this programmable money, if we say the wrong things on the internet, this is happening in China right now with CBDCs, guys. And we'll give you links. And there's a nice tracking website that shows you the entire globe, and it'll show you every country and where they're at in the process right now. You have to stay on top of that. But what I would tell you to do is focus on China and focus on India, because they're the furthest along with the CBDCs. And with every central bank digital currency, you have to attach a social credit system, right? And we're gonna have a separate. The next talk is going to be about the social credit system, and we'll show you some of the detrimental things that are happening right now in other countries, right? And we can't be blind to this, guys. This will happen in America. This is what America lives for, right? To be able to control food and money. You control life at the end of the day. So the China situation, they've been down this road for a little bit now. India, the longest, right? Since 2015, India has been already all digital, right? So they recently launched the digital rupee, which is in circulation now, and they're having a tough time. The people are having a tough time adopting to it, right? We're talking about people who are just used to having cash, and then whatever you have per day is what you spend. Now you're forcing them to go mobile, right? And then basically find ways to, figure this whole process out. I have people in my family who are of older age. They're not even on the internet. So never mind when the digital wallets come, it's like, how do they even set this up?
Right.
Right. I have aunts in Haiti who don't even have cell phones. Right. So we're talking about the underbanked, and we have a ton of people in the United States that are underbanked. People are using Cash App and fintech as their means of banking at the end of the day. So we have to catch up to speed. Things are moving at the speed of light, right? So there is no time. I can tell you this, and then Champ, you can grab it from here. If you do not understand central bank digital currencies and what it's going to do in the future, you are going to qualify for universal basic income. And that's going to be another one of our live talks. So just think about it, guys. First misconception, let's not act like all your spending that you do with these plastic cards aren't being tracked. They are. Let's not act like every keystroke or everything we post on the internet and every email, let's not act like there's not a profile already built on us. We see it. We say something, you go to your phone, it's there for you, right? Everything's being sold in real time. They are listening to us. Every device, every remote that we speak into, every TV that has a camera, we're being watched. So you lose the privacy now when you have the CBDCs, right? It's going to give them the ultimate power to violate our privacy. The other thing I need you to be aware of with the CBDC is, and I'm not going to go too heavy on it, but the social credit score and the system, guys, it's already in China. It's already in Italy. A lot of countries initially, when they first launch it, it's called a reward system.
Reward system, yeah.
But we understand that, Champ and I are shadow banned all over the internet for teaching financial literacy, right? They don't even want us to teach financial literacy, right? The reason that crypto is not talked about so much, and they're so hell bent on suppressing the information, is because they know that the guys that hold the information, like Champ and I, hold the key to the future, right? And I'm doing this for my family. This, this is, we're talking about generations beyond us that are going to be affected by things that happen today. So you have to understand that these CBDCs are not going to be our best friends. So when you have states like Florida, the governor there, he mentioned, not allowing CBDCs within the state. So now you're going to have an infighting, almost a revolution within the United States amongst state and the feds, right? Texas, same thing. Texas is looking to create their own gold back currency. So, we're going to get to a point now where every state is probably going to have their own monetary system based on who is running that particular state. So be mindful of when election cycles come, you have to look at the money. Do not let them bait you into race. Do not let them bait you into gender, right? They're throwing a whole bunch of other things at us to keep us distracted. You have to be mindful about the privacy and the freedoms, that just come with just being. Champ, what's your take on?
So I want to kind of piggyback off something you mentioned a few minutes ago. You were talking about how things are taking place in other countries outside of the United States and how eventually we have to pay attention to them because what happens is it's the precursor to what happens here. So for you, I know you guys truly understand this already, but I have to drive this point home because this is really important. So things that happen outside of the United States, they typically tend to happen here, but they happen later, right? The reason being is because the US is, of course, the superpower, right? It's the global superpower. So its dominance is always exuded over other countries. So we have a couple things that set in place because of the dollar standing that kind of guard us from things happening here first and rapidly, right? But here's what I want you guys to notice. So a couple months ago, I want to say maybe around January, February, you were starting to see things, little articles pop up, little news coverings about people going into banks and there were no tellers there, and they were kind of stopping people from being able to withdraw money out of their banks because the banks were becoming illiquid, right? Same thing was happening in cryptocurrency. So long story short, I'm reading an article a couple days ago about riots erupting in Nigerian cities because of bank policies leading to a scarcity of cash, right? And even before then, there were things that were happening in Italy where people were having the banks were essentially taking customers' deposits, and that happens here. Anybody who signs up for a bank account, you've already given the bank the ability to take 10% of whatever's in there at any given moment, right? And it's legal. So this is in the fine print, and a lot of people do not read the fine print. So here's my point though. Here's what I want to drive home. So I'm reading into why these riots were happening in Nigeria, and the thing was Nigeria has its own CBDC pilot that has already been rolled out, and it's called the e-naira, right? So the e-naira is essentially the conversion of the Nigerian digital fiat, fiat currency for that country, and it's the digital version of that, right? And how they were rolling it out though is because they were getting so much pushback in Nigeria from the people who just were simply saying, listen, we don't want to use that currency. We want to continue to use our fiat, right? They're hell bent on their fiat because this is their means of what they know and how they transact, how they feed their families, how they're paid, and compensated for their work, etc. Right? The people hated it, so they revolted against it. They were not using it. The response to the government was so low, and the implementation was so low that this is how they tried to force it. Right before the country's general election, which took place in later February, they tried to pull people's cash, and then they stopped the cash from being in circulation. Right. So if you create a shortage of actual cash, what do people have? They only have what you give them, which is the digital aspect, and they have to kind of just live off whatever reserves that they possibly have, right? So you're forcing people into the CBDC. You're not allowing them to make a conscious choice, an informed decision. You're basically saying, listen, this is what we do as the country. We're going to pool the available cash, and you're going to take whatever we give you. At what point to you Does that seem fair? And this is happening in another country, right? So as people started to line up at the banks, I'm talking lines and lines and lines. The people were so massively in the streets. They were blocking off streets and barricading streets because they were all lined up at banks. And I mean jam packed. The photos that I saw, people were this close to one another. And I'm talking about you could not see street at all. It was only the people. So when people hit the streets and they started creating this massive discourse, right, for whatever you're trying to give them, that's a message. That's a strong message, right? You have to control the people somehow, some way, because the more you take away their money and their civil liberties, people are going to start reacting. So as they're seeing this, you're now starting to see other countries who were essentially going to do the exact same thing. Now they have to cautiously roll things out. Now they have to hide things in bills and policies and things like that. And that's what we're seeing here in the United States. If you guys start to look at these current bills that we have, these current bills are loaded. And I was just telling Steve this before I called. They're loaded. It's multiple things that are inside these bills. And one thing you might see out the bill, somebody might catch a YouTube short or an Instagram post, and somebody only does one bullet of this bill, but this bill has 9 points in it. You completely miss the other 8 because you're only focusing on the one thing. That one thing that you focus on, and that now it's being spread like wildfire. So now the bill just kind of gets passed through Senate, goes to the Congress, etc. Right? And as these things are going, you just accept it because you only knew about one point but missed everything else. The other 8 aspects that you missed is what's going to be your detriment, because these guys are not doing things for our benefit. If you look at just historically, nothing they do is for the benefit of the people, truly. So as these guys are rolling out these CBDCs and things like that, and now they're starting to try to force things on the people of these other countries, understand that we are this close from it happening here, right? We already had the collapse of these banks. We're already in inflation, right? They're already doing quantitative easing where they're printing more money, right? And it's just a recipe for disaster. So as now they told us we're rolling out Fed now, right? Allegedly, this is not going to replace fiat. Anybody with a mind and eyes can clearly see this is the precursor to CBDCs, right? This is what's happening to lead us to what we're talking about today. So understand, CBDCs are going to be a horrible detriment to the people, right? You're going to lose all anonymity online. It's going to be completely obliterated. Privacy gone. And they're going to have massive controls on what you can spend your money on, how you can spend it, how long you have it. The China e-yuan, it has an expiration date on it, which means let's say you had cash, you had the regular yuan, right? And they decide, listen, we need less bills, less yuans in circulation, and they pull back 60%. There's only 40% left in circulation. And the only other option you have is the e-yuan, which is the CBDC of China. Now you begin to use the e-yuan because you don't have much of an option. That's what they're trying to do in all of these other countries. So why don't you think it can't happen here in the United States? So guys, understand what it is. Just know it's not for your benefit. I'm not for it. I completely stand against it, and that's just really my take on it.
Listen, here's something even more simpler, guys, right? Because you just pay attention to what's happening around you. Every single store I go to, I'd say about 80% of them aren't accepting cash, right? There's signs right at the register. Oh, there's a coin shortage, meaning they're telling you they don't have change to give you back, right? I have restaurants that I go to and it's 100% cashless. And I'm a business owner, so I'm kind of for that at the end of the day, because one, employees don't have to handle cash. You don't have to worry about the theft that comes from it. So there are a lot of good data points for business owners or just businesses in general that don't need to deal with this, right? Because theft is like a huge part of just once you own a business and people are touching money, it's gonna have legs.
Right.
So start looking at the register, start paying attention. All of this was because of the pandemic. Oh, we just don't want to be handling money anymore. It's dirty. It passes germs. Like, we've been touching this money for so long, right? So I think we're beyond the pandemic situation. So cash shortage, creating cash shortage, right? Now the new thing is now, and you got to pay attention, they're starting to incentivize you to bring plastic back in. They're going to recycle plastic cards. So people are giving up their debit cards now, right? My wife, she's more of an Apple Pay person. That's a wallet. They have already been conditioning us for decades to this point. We're already in a digital age when it comes to cash. I don't really carry cash anymore like that, right? One card in your pocket, simple swipe, safety, reliability, I'm good. So we have been trained for this. So in Nigeria, one of the things I want to touch on is it's always, like Champ says, problem, reaction, solution. So what was the problem? There was so much counterfeit money going on in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the reaction? Let's create a new currency, paper currency, that can sidestep the just make it a little harder for them to remake this money, right? So when they did that, what the government did was they didn't put the same amount of money in circulation. They cut it by half. And this is what created the run on the banks. There was no money in there. So people couldn't pull out money from the banks. They couldn't pull out money from the ATM. There was no more paper money. So the government's like, oh, we made a mistake. We did the wrong amount. But there is this digital currency on this side that you can use for a 1-for-1. So now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It was less than it was a 0.5% of the country adopted the CBDC in Nigeria. Now we're talking about people who probably don't have internet, right? Most of them who are underbanked. So how are they able to resist? And we're still kind of looking, right? So the United States is basically slow motioning the process here, right? They're conditioning us for this. So for everybody that thinks cash isn't dead, and they did the same thing with the Indian rupee, they had a certain amount of time that they had to redeem all their cash. They gave them, I think, 48 hours to put all the cash inside the bank. And then what did they do? They had IRS agents. They're not called IRS agents there, but they had them waiting. They were hitting everybody with tax evasion. 1% of the population in India pays taxes. So when you hear Biden and this administration going after Cash App and fintechs to figure out where the money's at, is because they lost track of the amount of money that was given to COVID. Instead of it was supposed to be circulated back into the economy again. People didn't do that. People went to the stock market, right? People invested in themselves. They didn't just buy things frivolously. So now a ton of people within our group and our organization built big businesses during the pandemic, because it was the first time in history that we all had access to capital, right? Guys, it's happening whether or not you want it to happen. I'm just telling you that we have the power to not use the CBDC. And then when you understand cryptocurrency, you can see what these guys are doing with Bitcoin today and why it's up to 30,000 because of failing banks. People are hedging against it. I make 15% of my money every day just trading ETH through our futures group every day, right? It may not seem like a lot, but guys, you're not even getting 1% a year.
Facts.
What is the CBDC?
That's it.
That's it. So in the bio or in the description after this video, I'm going to give you a tracker. Bookmark that. Go look at where every country's at. It's going to tell you exactly where they're at in the process, what they did, what they're doing, and then just know that this stuff is going to come here and hit us at home. And most won't be prepared. But our students and our frontline guys at the university, they're all prepared already. Take us out.
Listen, man, I definitely enjoyed this personally. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. What is the CBDC? What does it do? How does this affect us? Our take on it. All right. We're going to We're going to continue to drop these. We're going to keep dropping knowledge on you guys. Always stay tuned with the university. Big love. Steve.
And then just know tomorrow, tomorrow's topic is what?
Tomorrow we're going to do social credit system.
Social credit system. So this is the playoff of the CBDC. So once they're able to get everybody on board, this is the second part. That's the most detrimental part to this whole thing. So we're gonna dot connect tomorrow and play off of this. If you didn't watch the Fed Now situation and a few other videos, I'll urge you, because they're all prerequisites to each other, and then you get a full vantage of what's happening. And then Friday we're gonna break down the actual bill
Executive
That's
Order
going to further
7.
provide data and proof, right? Because a lot of people are saying this is all hearsay, but we read the bill; it's in there.
Let's get it. Executive Order 14067. Big love.
Yeah.
My God, we out.